Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those who are subscribed, I don't know who in the world you are, but this is not going to be like any of my previous videos. So I'm doing this mostly just to practice articulating myself, practice speaking, I suppose you could say in a sense public speaking, and I wanted to articulate this important issue, this important and hot button issue, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. And the issue is of the gun issue, gun control, gun violence, all of these terroristic attacks that are happening and how to stop it. Okay, how to do something, and that's what everyone wants to do. They say, what can we do? Let's do something about this. Well, you're already starting with a somewhat problematic way of thinking, because you can't always do something. You're not in control of everything. If any one of your neighbors wanted to just enter your house and kill you, and they didn't care about any ramifications, which that's a very important part of it because that's rare, but if they didn't care about any ramifications, then nothing in the world could stop them. Now, I'm not about to make the whole argument of that people make that I think is erroneous of, oh, we could ban guns, they'll just attack people with knives and stuff. Because, well, first of all, I don't think that's the issue, and I don't think that I don't think people will continue to do violence in the same way if they don't have access to a gun. I think plenty of people will say, well, I don't have a gun and I'm too scared to attack people with a knife and see what happens. So I think a lot of these types of issues will stop, and also it massively lessens the damage that you could do. So that's not the argument I'm going to attempt to make. Now, a lot of people say the point at things that we could do, and one of the biggest ones is mental health. And I think that's a erroneous claim to think that mental health is at the heart of all of these and that we could do something about all of them. Now, some of them do have to do with mental health in terms of, the worst of them was, now I can't think of the name of that Newton, I believe, where the person did have mental health issues, but plenty of these people don't have mental health issues. And that sounds controversial. I think it's controversial because we've so broadened the term mental health. Like I'm saying, and this is not what I'm saying, but people might misinterpret it to mean, oh, I'm saying there's nothing wrong with these people or what's wrong in their head. Yeah, there's something wrong in their head, but it's not a mental health issue. There's plenty of evil, horrible people. That doesn't mean that they have poor mental health. And I'm defining that mental health as somewhat circumscribed as a health issue. It's not a health issue for most of these people. And also, it's erroneous to think that all of these people, if we just got them the right sort of therapy or help, that they would somehow not be evil. Therapy is not usually meant to turn someone who's evil into someone who's not evil. I think there's plenty of great cases for therapy and plenty of great times to go to therapy. But it's not going to take, like, for instance, that person in Texas. Do you really think that crazed gunman, that anti-immigrant gunman, is really going to listen to therapy? Like, if he went to therapy, he would just solve his issues. Part of the reason I think the answer is no is because the issues go deeper than just mental health. Those issues are issues of philosophy, issues of morality. And I know you can touch on some of those within psychology, but psychology is a lot about trying to, it is about mental health. Psychology is, and it's not always that issue. Let me just give one issue that it could be, and this is just a possible cause. So, maybe it's not the main cause, but here's one idea. One possible cause of gun violence: people no longer believe that there's a God. That there's someone that sets a standard over us, that they're going to encounter God or encounter hell if they die. We're all following kind of our own values here. Well, if that's the case, each value is as arbitrary as the next. That's deeper than a mental health issue. That's a philosophical issue. Now, that might not be the cause. I certainly think that's a big contributing factor. I think if these people had the fear of God in them, they wouldn't be doing this, or at least not at the same rate. But let's say I'm wrong. So even if I'm wrong, that whole problem is not even in the domain of mental health. And I think people want to put it in the domain of mental health because health we could control. It's sort of a science. We have a lot of faith in science and scientific issues. It also relates to the idea, which I believe we're doing in our society, more of trying to reduce people to something scientific using mental health, which is a broader topic that I'm not really going to get into right now. But basically, we want to reduce people down to something scientific because we have assurance that we could understand people then if we could reduce them to science. But you can't really reduce people to a science. You can't reduce them to their mental health. Mental health is, important. It's an important part of people, but it's not the entirety of everything. Psychology doesn't describe every part of a person. Or maybe it should say psychology today. Maybe there's an appropriate psychology that brings all sorts of things like philosophy into consideration. So at any rate, here's the big point I'm trying to make, is that where there's very little that we could do, there's basically one thing, and that is gun control. Okay, now first of all, people say we need gun control. Okay, well, we already have gun control. We need background checks. Yeah, we already have background checks. We already have more than half the things people keep suggesting that we need. Like, we already have that in effect. So what we need to do possibly is change gun control. That's an argument that you can make. Although I think that people, like I said at the start of this video, they want to think that they could always do something. And if you change gun laws, yeah, you'll be doing something. It's not necessarily going to help. And let me just illustrate it by this. Well, first of all, will banning guns save lives versus will they save lives versus will they stop shootings or stop mass shootings? Those are two different questions, even though they sound like the same one. If we stop these mass shootings, we're going to save lives, right? Well, I think you will. I do think that these shootings will get way, way less if we have stricter gun control. I think that is the case. However, guns do save lives all the time. And people will point out, well, a gun's designed to kill people, which is, it kind of reminds me of the Confucian saying when someone points, the idiot looks at the finger. Like, yeah, it immediately, but let's think a little bit bigger picture here, okay? They could prevent crime. They save lives all the time. They prevent rape all the time. The number of people whose lives are saved are way more than the lives that are lost in high-profile shootings. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson recently posted a tweet about this, although I think that he was rather coarse and insensitive in the way that he proposed his ideas, where he was saying, well, I don't want to link to the tweet or anything, but long story short, he seemed to be downplaying the shootings. I'm not trying to downplay the shootings at all, obviously, or hopefully that's obvious. However, I think that we need to realize that if we have more gun control and people cannot own guns to protect them, you have to weigh the lives saved in these mass shootings against the lives lost who could not protect themselves. That's the only responsible way to go about this policy. And I think that the number of people whose lives will be lost, the additional lives that will be lost, is going to be way, way bigger than the number of lives lost in high-profile shootings. We might pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we fixed the problem, because we want to do something. We want to fix the problem, which I guess maybe I'm acting too hard on it. Like, that's good that we want to do something, but the problem is, yeah, we actually can fix like all these shootings probably, or at least really decrease them, but then you're going to increase all these other deaths. So it's not that simple. There's a lot of other lives that could potentially be lost. So don't say do something, say do the right thing. What's the right thing to do? Because you can do something, but but just taking action is not enough. It's not even necessarily the right answer. And I think it kind of comes to this fundamental preconceived notion that we could always fix things, that we could always do something to help, and sometimes things are not preventable. So at any rate, if we ban guns and high-profile shootings cease, is it worth that massive cost of vulnerable people who will now die because of the increased gun restrictions? That I'm at least proposing will happen, but I think it's pretty clear that that will happen. I'll try to link below to an article that's on this topic. So I think that that's the fundamental issue. Now, for me, I would say, and I mean, you have to weigh one against the other, which I think people are reluctant to do. They just want to say, I just want to do something positive. But, well, you could do something trying to just be positive, but you might cause this other bigger issue. I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'll try not to do that. I'm sorry. But I guess for me, I would say there's going to be more lives lost if we have a lot stricter gun control. And I'm not talking about background checks and that whole thing. We already have all of that. Okay, we have all of that. And if you want to point to a state, like maybe you say, I don't know, in Maine or Alabama or whatever, there's some state where they need additional restrictions, and fine. But that's usually not what people say. They just want to blanket more gun control when it's not necessarily a great way to solve the issue. So at any rate, I wanted to record this in part as a way to articulate my thoughts and possibly post them on the internet to start a discussion, especially because I think I don't hear people saying these issues or bringing them up, and I'm just like, are people aware of this? And then secondly, I just want to get better at articulating my thoughts in a way that people could listen to. So hopefully, I mean, even then, it's becoming more difficult for me to tell whether a reasonable argument really will win out in the so-called marketplace of ideas, as Jefferson put it, or if people are just going to follow their own preconceived notions regardless. But at any rate, thank you for listening. Feel free to comment below, and yeah, hopefully we could generate a discussion that is productive around this important issue.